Let's talk about Planeswalkers and Planes. So I've been asked separately to talk about what both Planeswalkers are and what Planes are in Magic the Gathering, and it's easier to talk about them both together because they have context. Let's start very basically with some Magic the Gathering multiverse cosmology. So, Magic's universe or multiverse is made up of something called the Blind Eternities. Within the Blind Eternities are these pockets of reality called planes. It's only inside these planes where things like you and I would define reality exist. Outside of it, it's this sort of chaotic, potential nowhere space. Extremely powerful, almost conceptual beings live in the Blind Eternities, like the Dragon, the origin of dragons. And it's also the native environment of the Eldrazi, these cosmic horror entities. Both the Dragon and Eldrazi and similar beings only take physical form when they enter into a plane. Now, planes themselves and the metaphysics in them can be basically anything. Now, because we're following humanoid type characters, we typically only go to planes where that are survivable for them. It would really suck if they planeswalked into an empty void and suffocated to death. But planes can be anything like Ravnica, which is a planetoid in a solar system with a larger universe around it that is traversable. We actually saw the angels leave in the first Parhelion, and they traveled to the very edge of the universe in Ravnica. Similarly, Dominaria has an entire solar system itself and probably more beyond. But on the flip side, we have Theros, where the sky is literally just an enchantment that lets you view the god realm of Nyx. And in fact, it is very specifically flat, with the oceans falling off into nothingness at the edges of the world. And then most planes fall somewhere in between there. Pyrulia is an inverted sphere, and as far as we know, there's nothing below the ground. Although, to be fair, on most planes, we usually don't explore those boundaries. We're looking at a very myopic, small segment of the plane, and there's implication that there's always more beyond, but that people haven't explored it yet. Kaldheim is a bunch of realms connected to a world tree with a metaphysical space, almost like the Blind Eternities, although not as harsh, called the cosmos, separating them. We can also have artificial realms. Planeswalkers back in the day were capable of creating worlds like this. Sarah created Sarah's realm, which is sort of this angelic place that was clouds and thin floating landmasses and not much else. Or Phyrexia was a plane created as 9 nested metal spheres, and there was nothing else in that physical space. Mirrodin was an empty void until Karn arrived and created the planetoid of Argentum, which then later became renamed Mirrodin, and then New Phyrexia. Kamigawa is split between the mortal realm and the Kami realm, the spirit realm. And most planes will have other realms built within them. Nyx on Theros and the Underworld on Theros are not two different planes. They are different realms within the same reality. It's possible to traverse between them without being a planeswalker. And then some planes are just weird, like Segovia, where everything is at a miniature scale. It's Lilliputian in scale. In general, outside of Ravnica and Dominaria, and maybe Innistrad as far as the moon goes, we don't know how much exists out there, if they're even a heliocentric solar system, if there is a whole solar system out there, or what. Now, the people who are able to move between planes are beings called planeswalkers. And what a planeswalker is, it is a person born with a touch of the Blind Eternities, the ether that fills the Blind Eternities on their soul. And because of this, they're both able to move into the Blind Eternities and survive the Blind Eternities, which is ordinarily not survivable except of very, very special means or very, very powerful creatures. And even then, they can't stick around a long time or it'll tear them apart too. It's a very hostile environment to living beings from planes. Now, the Blind Eternities to a planeswalker has appeared to be very different things over the years, and that's because it's very subjective. So someone like Nissa might view it as like this metaphysical vine and plant realm. In the Boom comics, we see that Kaya views it as sort of like the spirit realm because there's implication that souls return to the Blind Eternities when you die, unless something like an afterlife catches your soul. Or in terms of sensation, someone like Chandra might feel like she's constantly falling through it rather than having much sense of control over her planeswalks. Now, just having that touch of the blind eternities on your soul is not enough to make you a planeswalker. That ember has to ignite and become a spark. And how that happens is through some sort of transcendent emotional experience. It could range from reaching enlightenment to being tortured. And unfortunately, with the way the multiverse works, it's usually trauma-based rather than not. Although Tamio transcended by finding a book from outside her plane, and the idea of finding stories beyond what she thought was possible ignited her spark. Narset had a very similar experience. For Chandra, it was being a preteen girl and having Baral try and execute her and blaming her parents' death on her. For Gideon, it was accidentally getting his friends killed and surviving. Jace doesn't actually remember the first time his spark ignited because Alhammaret kept erasing it to keep him as a useful tool. For Liliana, it was the horror of realizing she'd turned her brother into something horrible. And for Nissa, it was catching a glimpse of Emrakul imprisoned on Zendikar. For Urza, who is early Magic's most famous planeswalker, it was the detonation of the Silex that destroyed Argoth. And he fused with the Mightstone and Weakstone and became a planeswalker. Now, sparks are transferable, but only through massive power. Ordinarily, only beings who would have a soul, that is, a being who was born naturally, can have a spark. That's why our Angel and Demon planeswalkers, Obnixilis and Elspeth, both transformed into those forms later. For Karn, he got it through the massive surge of power that was the legacy weapon that killed Yawgmoth, killed Urza, and the Mightstone and Weakstone fused to Karn. But we've seen other ways. Nicol Bolas had the Elder spell, in which he used the Eternals to basically rip the soul from planeswalkers' bodies and absorb as many as he could to regain his godlike power. That's because the nature of the spark is mutable, it's changeable. About 60 years ago in Universe, there was an event called the Mending, which changed planeswalkers from having this near divine level of power to being just extra powerful mages. And then, of course, after the Phyrexian invasion again, there was the Spark Rupture, which caused many planeswalkers to lose their spark, leaving only a handful behind. There are also some fun corner cases like Kaito in Himoto, the little Tanuki robot that is secretly housing the Kami of the Spark. When Himoto bonded to Kaito, Kaito was able to planeswalk and became a planeswalker. Similarly, the Wanderer's bonding of Kyodai, who is sort of the guardian spirit of the barrier between realms and the Blind Eternities. When something went wrong with Kyodai, the Emperor's spark ignited as well, although hers was like wonky and didn't work very well. She kept planeswalking to different places and wasn't fully in control. So that is how Magic's multiversal metaphysics and planeswalkers work in less than 9 minutes. Let me know if there's other things you want me to cover.